All right, we're recording.
Well, welcome. This is Bohemian Geek Studies' first kickoff on YouTube, and we're here with the BGS ladies. Ladies, do you want to introduce yourselves?
You can go first, Colleen.
Let me go first. All right. My name is Colleen McMillan. My title for this show is Jedi Master, although I'm probably not as close to Jedi Master as I would like to be, but for all intents and purposes, that is me for this podcast and this YouTube channel. Hello.
Indeed.
I think you're definitely a Jedi Master.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm Rose Siegel. I am your manager of Mischief, and I'm really excited to be here to talk about this topic. I've only been waiting since I was 12 years old to do this.
Yeah, and my name is Sarah O'Connor, and I am the queen of queries. So in case you have been following Flo's fantastic work on the Tweeterville and the Insta of the Grams, today we are talking about fan fiction, and I'm very much a pun intended virgin in this arena. I know, like, just a little bit, but not that much. And fortunately, we've got two expert queens with us on today to talk about fan fiction and kind of like how we've been kind of signing off each of the episodes saying, literally write to us about what gets you excited. Again, pun intended. Do that for us because, frankly, Flo's passion in this topic and Colleen's expertise as well. I mean, it is what it is. Spade a spade. That's what we're calling it. We're able to dive into this topic that is actually incredibly vast. So without further ado, I'm going to largely act as a moderator here, folks. Still feel free to send in questions about this topic to the extent you have them. Depending on how much traction and action we get, maybe we do a follow-up, maybe we do a little shout in the Tweeterville or something. But as I said, without further ado, let's dive into kind of understanding what the F even is fan fiction or fanfic. Who wants to handle that, like, basic question?
Flo, do you want to take that one?
I don't know if you guys can tell, like, how much I'm blushing right now. I'm so excited.
This is gonna be good. I'm very ready.
Yeah, so I had a feeling that this question was going to come up, but basically fan fiction is fans writing fiction about a existing work. The first fan fiction, I did research. The first recorded fan fiction was in 1952.
Ooh.
And I can tell you about it. It was
please do.
It was called The Enchanted Duplicator, which I know.
Yeah, and hold on. We don't have that, like, we're like, okay, now go ahead, Flo. There you go.
The more you know.
It was a meta fan fiction based on Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress. And that's pretty much what we know about it from 1952. But since then, it's like really evolved into its own kind of like branch of fiction. And the big impetus for it was the launch of fanfiction.net in 1998.
Interesting. So it's been pretty much as old as all of us. Like, it is literally, we have grown up literally in the hotbed of fan fiction. Like, we are in the mecca of the times.
Oh yeah. Especially with the big YA fantasy science fiction stuff hitting, that is where a lot of the most popular fan fiction stems from.
And my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Flo and Colleen, is fan fiction kind of has to have copyright, characters, time, setting, place, yada yada. Otherwise, you're just writing your own original, maybe saucy story.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, there's usually at least like one link to an existing story.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like how E.L. James wrote 50 Shades of Grey from a Twilight fan fiction. So her original fiction, 50 Shades, is not fan fiction, even though it's based heavily on Twilight.
Which is funny because I was gonna save this for later, but I would say Twilight is fan fiction for the Sookie Stackhouse series, which is fan fiction for Frankenstein's monster and Dracula. So it's just like,
well,
I guess
that's the thing, like, it's all derivative, right? So.
Exactly. I mean, it would behoove us to not be Bohemian Geek Studies if we didn't say even fan fiction is like the protagonist with 1,000 faces or whatever the fancy schmancy Colleen would know this better than I would story, where no matter what it is, you get to fill in the sauciness or the delight because a good story is a good story.
That's right.
That's why they stand the test of time and why they're reused over and over again. They can
I do have the top fandoms, like who's got the most fan fiction numbers.
Yes, please.
Ravenclaw did.
Yes.
So far and away, the most fan fiction written on the internet is Harry Potter fan fiction, which is my personal brand of fan fiction. With this, again, this is Google, so don't hold me to it, but they said 822,000 fanfics related to Harry Potter. Number 2, surprising, actually, like, I don't know, what would you guys think number 2 would be?
Star Wars.
I would have thought so too, and Star Wars did not even hit the top 4.
Wow.
Number 2 is Naruto. Which is like wild. 432,000. Number 3 is Twilight with 221,000. And then Supernatural with 125,000 fans.
That makes sense. There are a lot of Supernatural fans.
I've never even
right. It's very good.
Wow.
It is very good.
Did you see where Game of Thrones ranked on it? Or
no, it only showed me the first 4. If we do a part 2, actually, I'll post a fuller list on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, not a semi, but a full is what you're saying. Full. Yeah.
This is the top 4. But I was happy to see that Harry Potter's blowing everyone out of the water twofold. So
yes,
it would also be sense. It would also be interesting, like if we're gonna break this down, right? I also want to know, if possible, within that massive amount of content, which like one true pairings are the ones that like get it the most.
I mean, I think that's so tricky, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but I think it like really depends on like which era of Harry Potter fan fiction you're talking about.
Yeah, and let's definitely save that, because I know that you've got some good stuff for that.
I've got stuff to
I know you got some.
I didn't even bother looking at Harry Potter, so it's like Flo's got that.
Oh yeah, I'm on it.
So besides Flo giving us a full later with respect to the list, where do you access your fan fiction? Because the one place that I learned about in doing a little bit of research today is called like the shorthand AO3 Archive of Our Own. Right. But like I have like a little blurb that I copy and pasted, but why don't you two ladies kind of take it away to the extent you know of that place, and then also the other place or places you were mentioning.
How about you start, Colleen?
Yes, AO3 is definitely the place where I've accessed the most fan fiction. That is where one of our friends, who is an avid fan fiction reader, sent me some recommendations. Nice. And they were all from AO3. I remember back when like the Harry Potter fan fiction really started to take off, and also essay writing started to take off. There's a lot of content on LiveJournal. So I'm really dating myself right now. I actually wrote a lot of essay content for LiveJournal. So that was one of the places you could go. But there were tons of Harry Potter speculative sites that posted not only the essays, but also the fan fiction.
Yeah, so I looked this up actually. AO3 started in 2009, so it's pretty recent compared to other fan fiction sites. So I began reading fan fiction in the early 2000s as a preteen.
So young.
So at that time, I read on Fiction Alley, which was launched in 01. And Fiction Alley was huge. Like a lot of my summer memories of being at my grandma's house are of being on Fiction Alley on the balcony, and my grandma had like an allotted internet usage in France. Yeah. So you only got 20 hours a month, and I could like blow through 20 hours in like a day.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would open a fan fiction, turn off the internet, read the page, turn on the internet, go to the next page. It was a whole thing.
Survive and thrive, baby. Survive and thrive.
It was intense.
Minor cameo from Duncan.
Hi, Dunk.
Hi, Dunk. Yep. He's our Crookshanks.
He is.
He is. So then in 2018, Fiction Alley closed and moved all their content to AO3. But I definitely remember Fiction Alley. I don't know. Did you ever read Harry Potter fan fiction on Fiction Alley, Colleen?
Yes, I remember that site.
Okay. Do you remember how it was split into 4 houses?
Yes.
So I looked this up because all I could remember was the Schnoogle one, which was the novel length fics, and then there was the Astronomy Tower, which was romance, which I got really into, Ridiculous, which was comedy, and the Dark Arts, which were like dark, moody fics. And
this is great.
This is bringing back a lot of memories.
Right? Do you remember like the graphics for it?
Yes.
It was whatever. It was like such good fan art. It was amazing. If I can find some, I'll post them on Instagram for you guys to check out.
Yeah.
It was just like life-changing.
Oh, and I think this is fair to say. If you are listening on the podcast, literally jump over onto YouTube if you want to like see our faces, giggle with glee and blush. But I apologize for interrupting. For the first time ever, we are both visual and audio. Yeah.
Come see our faces. And then I don't know if you remember, Colleen, but there were like super active message boards on there too.
Oh yeah.
Like it was insane. People would like
LiveJournal was like
launch
that too.
ships and like name their ships. It was a whole thing.
It's a culture.
It was.
FanFiction is a huge culture.
Huge culture. So since then, obviously Fictionality has closed. I have been pretty much reading exclusively on fanfiction.net. For like the purpose of this podcast, I tried to go on AO3 and like figure them out because they do have a much more extensive library of fanfiction.
Okay.
I just like struggle with their search features. You've got to be like extremely specific.
Yes.
And they have like absolutely like no limit to what you can write. So there's like a lot of content warnings that have to be heeded. So watch out on that one.
But a lot of those last night.
Yeah.
It's dangerous out there.
So many hashtags.
But yeah, I would say fanfiction.net is my number one place to get fanfiction. I know a lot of younger readers are on Wattpad, which is a newer one, but us old folks are on AO3 and fanfiction.net.
That's hilarious. Okay, cool. Well, now that we kind of understand what it is and where it is, I think we kind of covered what was going to be my next question for you ladies, your fan fiction origin stories. But Colleen, to the extent we haven't heard from you, and Flo, in case you haven't elucidated us. Yeah. So why don't we start with pretending as if we know nothing then? What are each of your fan fiction origin stories? Because mine is like 10 seconds long, and I can go last. Go ahead, Colleen.
Well, mine started probably when I was about 12 because I'm a writer, and writers usually start out writing really bad derivative fan fiction. That's pretty much a given. I've been writing since I was in the first or second grade. And when I was 12, I wrote my very first long form piece, a sequel to The Lion King. Before Disney did their sequel, and I'm pretty sure they stole some of my ideas, but that was my very first like actual long form piece, was the sequel to The Lion King.
Cool.
That's like the origin for me writing it. For me reading it, it's Harry Potter.
Gotcha. How about you, Flo?
Yeah, so like I said, I started reading Harry Potter fan fiction in the early 2000s. I still pretty exclusively read Harry Potter fan fiction. I also wrote my own fan fiction. Honestly, like, I'm not even joking. You two, and now all of YouTube and the world. Before that, like, maybe 5 people knew that. Like,
we're literally breaking cutting story edge stuff, you know what I mean? Like, this is where it happens.
I'm gonna
I
need
think
that
it took
story.
me like over a year to admit it to my husband.
Oh,
so
so sweet.
And like, it really should not be this like hush hush like subculture of fan fiction. Like, you're so geeky. You read like, it's a major part of my life, and like now I'm letting you guys know about it. So around 2002, I started writing fan fiction with my best friend. Shout out to you, Julian. We like collaborated on a pretty long form story that was a sequel to Harry Potter. I will not give out the title because it is trash, so please do not go read it. And then I wrote some solo pieces of like fluffy lesser ships. Like, I shipped George and Alicia Spinnet pretty heavily. So like, I wrote something about them. I wrote stuff about Dennis Creevy and Gabrielle Delacour.
He does deserve love. You know what I'm saying?
I want that story so badly.
Yeah, he does. And yeah, so that's pretty much what I wrote. I must have written maybe like 6 one-shot pieces and then 1 multi-chapter long-form piece.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And a one-shot piece means like a 1 chapter or a short story?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool,
It can even be 1 paragraph. I mean.
Yeah, some people write like this much. And
a
that's
short.
Nice. Well, I mean, I guess it isn't the size that counts. It's whether or not your impact is.
Sometimes the impact is good.
Well, my fan fiction origin story is I really don't think I dove into any. Like I remember writing fan fiction Garfield comics.
My brother did that too.
I totally did that. And then I also remember, although I totally misremember, right? It had to have been a fan fiction for Animorphs because there's no way I came up with Animorphs before Animorphs existed. But when I was flying unaccompanied minor, I lost my short story. I kept it in the airplane thing. And wouldn't you know it, folks? Wouldn't you know it? So I can't take credit for all of Animorphs. I can only take credit for the worst part of it. That's all I have to say about that.
I'm just saying, I've never seen you and whoever the author of Animorphs is in the same place.
In the same room. It's true. It's true. Let's see. This is good. Why, and maybe this gets a little saucy, why read fan fiction? So we understand our origins, but like, maybe we're hitting puberty, maybe we don't need to get too far down the rabbit hole, but like, what is the allure besides, I assume, kind of spreading your own linguistic wings and flying? Why fan fiction in light of so much fan fiction and romance novels, if we're doing the more exotic stance of it?
I can take this one. I've got notes.
Yes, please.
Like hop in. I have some ideas, but yes, go.
Well, you fill in your ideas where mine are lacking, but I think there's like 2 main reasons why people read fan fiction. The first one would be extension and prediction, and that was especially prevalent. I'm going to speak specifically to the Harry Potter fandom, but this is happening in the Game of Thrones fandom right now, and definitely also the Star Wars fandom, because Star Wars is like really never over.
Yeah.
So during the, quote, long summer of Harry Potter, which was nearly 3 years between Goblet, which came out in 2000, and Order, which came out in 2003, fan fiction exploded. I think that was like a time where a lot of us got into Harry Potter fan fiction because we had nothing to consume besides reading the same books over and over and over again and like digging for meaning. So everyone was like writing their predictions, talking about predictions with each other. You know, message boards were exploding, forums, AIM chats, whatever it was. So yeah, we all had these ideas about where JK was going to go with the books. And at that time, like, fan fiction was really exciting because nothing was set in stone and nobody knew where it was going to go. And there was like this tiny hope that like, oh, well, what I wrote is going to be canon. Like what I wrote is exactly what she's thinking. So,
and you know, just theorizing out loud, what a good serendipitous timing for a dry spell in light of the like coming of age kind of themes, yada yada. It's like one of the things that sometimes operates as a red flag to me a little bit is kind of like, how do we enjoy fan fiction where the characters are younger than we are now, kind of thing? But putting myself at least back in that arena, and I'm willing to suspend some disbelief and allow myself to go back in time to where I was when I first met these characters. Imagine being so thirsty for what comes next as Hermione has her first kiss. Like, girl, we know that you and Crumbly Bumbly were doing a little bit more than smooching. Ron just can't take the heat.
Just the fact that JK gave us the Yule Ball and then left us hanging was like, what are you doing to us?
Yeah.
I mean, the Yule Ball remains to this day my favorite chapter. I actually have my Yule Ball coaster right here. It was like a sexual awakening for my... At that time, I was 10. I was literally 10, And I was just like, this is it. This is romance. I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one of the reasons why people read fanfiction, extension and prediction. And then the other reason, which is what's happening now with the Harry Potter fandom, is wish fulfillment. So now, like, obviously Harry Potter's pretty complete. So why are people still reading and writing fanfiction? Yeah, like, it's not as clear cut as to why, like, people are reading and writing it now. But one thing is for sure, we love the world. We want to get back in it. We want it to be extended. We want to see our favorite characters again and, like, go deeper into their development. And then some people, me, want additional canon. So that's like, I pretty much only read canon fan fictions or like canon compliant. So like, for example.
And is that a hashtag for someone who's like not in that world?
Canon compliant?
Yeah. Is that like, okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty common like tag that they would use.
Cool.
Writers
established relationships instead
right.
of
It's basically just like saying like, this isn't in the books, but it could be in the books.
Cool.
So I'll give you an example, Sarah. So like, I'm a Ron Hermione shipper. You guys already know that, but watchers and listeners, you may not know that. My favorite character is Ron, and I pretty much only read fanfiction that has Ron in it. That wasn't always the case, but that is the case now. Back in like the early 2000s, I was a pretty serious Draco Ginny shipper and like would only read Draco Ginny fanfiction. But then when that became not canon and when spoiler Draco basically became a Death Eater, I was like, I'm done with you. You can't get my Ginny now. So like some of the fan fiction I really enjoy now is like canon compliant 6th year and 7th year, specifically like tent stuff, like when they're on the run and Ron and Hermione are like having a lot of issues and then Ron comes back.
All
the tension. All the tension.
Yeah, but it's all like very canon compliant. And then some people really want alternate universe, or AU as it's called. And those are both valid and great reasons to read fanfiction, whether it's canon compliant or AU, doesn't matter. It's important that people just like are happy. Like fanfiction just makes you happy.
Yeah.
And like some of it's just funny. Like people who ship Draco and the apple, I'm all about that life.
I'm sorry.
There's some weird ships.
Yes, and what?
Yeah, there's like a huge amount of fan fiction written about, it's called Drapple, and it's Draco Malfoy and the apple that he puts into the vanishing cabinet.
I'm not laughing at people.
No. It's just a surprising one. I'm all about it. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of Draco Harry fan fiction out there, which is great. Yeah, it's a huge subset.
And Sirius Remus is big.
Sirius Remus, Wolf Star is huge. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of really great stuff out there. So I think there's something for everybody. Colleen, why do you think people read fan fiction?
I think they read it because it fills gaps.
It
fills gaps in canon, especially with things like Star Wars. There are a lot of relationships that are hinted at. And because it's kind of, like Harry Potter, it's more of a younger person's genre, or seen as a younger person's genre that can be enjoyed by every age. But you have to hide certain things. So there's a lot of tension between characters, especially sexual tension.
I love tension.
Fan fiction can take care of. Like you have Obi-Wan and Satine. They obviously have some sort of romantic relationship, but it's not shown in the Clone Wars. So there's a lot of fan fiction about them. And same with Hera and Kanan from Rebels. I actually have my little pop guys back there, Kanan and Hera.
Hey guys.
And they have a canon relationship, but it's not explored very fully in the show because it's a very serious adult relationship. And they were probably at first thinking kids might not get this, or they might not be interested in this. So there's a lot of fan fiction about their relationship throughout the series.
Which, I mean, I don't mean to fire shots at Disney like this, but like, y'all just like showed lines romping around for a good long while. I think we can handle some human on human stuff.
Well, you don't know. It's because they stole Colleen's Lion King fanfiction.
That's true.
Rude. Just rude.
It's true. So we understand a little bit of how Flo's like fan fiction consumption changed a little bit. And if there's additional things you need to highlight, let us know, Flo. What about you, Colleen? Have you kind of stayed the course? Has your taste or stories or yada yada changed? Obviously, as new stories come into existence that allows for fan fiction to be enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. I hadn't read a ton of fan fiction since the early days of Harry Potter. In that summer where we were waiting forever, that is when I consumed probably the most fan fiction I ever had, just because I was writing also, so I was busy writing my own shit. So I was not consuming as much per se fan fiction wise. And then recently I just started really getting into Star Wars and the relationships in Star Wars. And I've had a lot of stuff sent to me that I'm like, oh, interesting. Interesting. Yes, tell me more. So I think
A Way to a Jedi's Heart is not abstaining as the old code has it.
No, definitely not. I would say it has matured. I'm older now. I was 19, I think, when I started reading the Harry Potter fan fiction, and I'm 38 now. Yeah. So my taste has definitely changed. And the relationships I'm interested in has changed a lot. I'm more interested in the adult romantic relationships. Whereas when I was 19, I was like, heck yeah, Harry and Ginny, they're 17. They're fine. Everything's great.
Go do it, kid.
Yeah. Go figure it out.
Yeah, you do you. It's great.
Yeah, nice. I would agree with that. I think that like during the long summer, I was reading mostly for like content and just like what's like action, like what's going to happen, how are they going to take down Voldemort, what is happening. Now, like obviously I know what's happening with that, so now I'm more like into the character development and filling in those gaps.
Who's your favorite pairing for Neville? Because Neville deserves like a great partner. Yeah, Neville, like I really ship Neville with just love.
No, wait, should we like write it down on a piece of paper and then show each other?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I got my notebook ready.
That way it like adds a little bit of excitement.
Yeah.
Here, so I've got crayons. Okay, so who do you ship Neville with? Okay.
Yeah. I think we should do Neville.
This is so hard. I've got two.
That's fine. Okay. That's fine. We can
I'll
have
give you
two.
my top one.
I do like who he ends up with, but if I were to throw my ship out there, it would be.
Yeah.
I'm ready too.
Okay, and then I have one for Game of Thrones, I think. Okay, so Flo, go first.
I have picked Luna.
Yeah.
Okay. I just think they're like super sweet. Like obviously this is movie canon. Neville says that he's gonna go get Luna. I figure like this is probably flipped in the video. Whatever. This says Luna in case you didn't know. I just think they're sweet together and they're like quirky and fun. And like they were both at the Ministry. They've got a lot of shared experiences, both in the DA. I don't know. My secondary is Hannah Abbott.
Okay. How about you, Miss Colleen?
Yeah!
No.
Yeah,
there you go.
From the movies, the actors I think had a really great rapport.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Really great chemistry. In the books, I think that Luna would terrify Neville.
Yeah.
Whereas in the movies, it was more like, yes, they obviously have some sort of spark.
Listen, every man needs a Luna. They just don't know it yet.
So true.
Sarah, who do you ship him with?
So Luna makes a lot of sense to me, frankly. I'm gonna go like really edgy and say Neville had wanted to ask a particular girl out to dance, and he was gunning for her. And Harry Potter is not the only one who deserves a Minerva. So I would definitely like to see whether or not Ginny and Neville would enjoy, maybe not necessarily knocking boots, at least seeing what's going down in the Three Broomsticks, because I think they have a lot in common for the same reasons, for very similar reasons to like Luna, but also Neville was willing to ask her out to dance, and we can't say the same for Harry and Ron.
I think if you go back to the early 2000s, you'll find a lot of Neville Ginny fan fiction back when that was a canon pairing, so you can go and have your fill.
All right, phew. I can have late stage wish fulfillment, which is a purpose for fan fiction, as we've learned today.
Exactly.
Let's see.
You had a GOT one. I want to hear the GOT
Yes.
one.
What's the GOT one?
Okay. I'm interested in hearing who you'd pair Ned Stark with, because I have an edgy pairing.
Ned?
Yeah, Ned Stark. Mm-hmm.
Besides
Sorry,
Cat?
Catelyn. Sorry, Catelyn.
Okay.
Yeah. We're talking about the lone shy wolf. We're not talking about who he had to marry. We're talking about who he should marry.
I've never thought about this.
Oh,
Exactly.
I thought a lot about this.
Here.
Okay.
I should write this down too. Because I think people might get a little bit upset, but it's so flippin' true.
Okay. This is not going to go down well, people.
I'm excited.
Okay, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. Colleen, you go first.
Ashara Dane.
Okay.
He should have been with Ashara Dane. He loved her.
I want to be clear. I'm not a book reader. So.
That's fine. That's fine.
This is totally from the books.
Actually,
completely from the books.
True. I did read the books. I'm on the last book. However, I like skimmed through a lot of it because it was just, I know this. Sorry, everybody. It was just like a lot.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. You know what? I'll do a shout to one of my favorite people. In Deep Geek, if you want to get like a lot about Game of Thrones, go hit my boy up because he is fantastic in that. In the meantime, Flo, who are we fanficking poor old Neddy Stark with?
Oh God. First of all, I'm so sorry, Ned. I just accept all my apologies. Okay, so here's the thing. Like, Ned doesn't have that much of a personality, right? Like, he's just like kind of there. And
he's known as the shy wolf. Yeah.
He's very true. Very true.
Yeah, and like, I just figure like he could have this like nice quiet life with a crazy person, but I'm gonna go with Liza.
Oh.
Sorry, Catelyn.
I'm gonna go with your sister, Kat. Sorry. I just feel like she didn't have to be as out there as she was, and like maybe he could have like calmed her down a little bit, and like they could have just like lived happily and been kind of like out of the way of things. Yes. My secondary would be just like straight up Ned and Robert. Go get yours. Yeah.
Bobby B.
Bobby B. I'm not even kidding, y'all. Like, I need to read the books more, but I am pretty convinced that Ned Stark is not heterosexual. I'm pretty sure that when it comes to, you know, who I think Ashara Dane or Lyanna Stark had turned to at the jousting, it was not Ned. It was his sister, and I'm pretty sure that one of the reasons why Ned is unable to stand up to Bobby B is because he has got a heartthrob for his guy and remembers what the big bad burly bull had looked like back in his youth, and he has got a flame for him and cannot put it out. Poor Ned Stark.
I think that's very relevant.
Yeah, it was not the world that he should have been born into, and it is no wonder that he is dutiful and shy. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm pretty sure that Bobby B would be down for that. I'm not even kidding.
Bobby B is down for anything.
I think he's down for most things.
He is down for a lot of things.
I think he's all right.
Excellent. Okay, so how about this? Do you ladies still write fan fiction at all?
No.
I write essays. I don't write fiction about it, but I will write content about things that I enjoy.
Excellent.
I'm busy writing my own fiction. I can't.
Now that is true. Do you want to like, I always like encouraging my people to shout what they're doing. What are you writing, Miss Colleen, the author?
I'm actually on my second edit of my second novel.
No big deal.
No, yeah, it's fine. Everything's fine. Nothing's on fire. My first book was like a romantic comedy style, and it's called Men of the Year. Kind of Bridget Jonesy, a little bit like it's a comedy basically of a lot of dating errors, which I myself have committed. And then my second book is the more comfortable genre that I'm in, which is like a little bit Stephen King meets Flannery O'Connor, like small town setting, weird shit happens. And I'm currently trying to edit that down. It was 700 pages long.
Wow.
And now it's 600.
Relax, George.
And I'm trying. I can't help it. I thought it was going to be a lot shorter. Yep. I had a lot of characters. I needed to inhabit a whole town, and there you go. But yeah, I love writing. So anytime I get to write any sort of content, whether it's for like the podcast or writing an essay about Star Wars, or my own fiction. Like, sign me up. I'm ready.
Yeah, I don't write anymore either. Well, you still write. I don't write anything. I write lesson plans. Yeah, no, I have not written fan fiction probably since maybe like 2007. And I graduated high school in 2008, so mostly wrote in middle and high school, and really pretty exclusively with my best friend Julian. That was it.
That's so perfect. Okay, so now that we kind of understand the purpose of fan fiction in geek culture, unless there's something else you ladies want to add, are there negative sides to fan fiction and or like a negative look that outsiders may have to fan fiction? Because I have like a teeny little kernel when it came to me soliciting information or ideas. It's very interesting. I suppose it's indicative of anything, any story, like let's just call it capital S story, that people hold dear. There can be very strong reactions to.
There definitely can.
So Flo, why don't you start with, to the extent you know of, negative experiences or thought processes about fan fiction?
I think people are pretty judgmental about fan fiction, and I think they're pretty judgmental about people who read and write fan fiction. I think there's like this idea that like people who write fan fiction are like gremlins who are like in a basement somewhere and like aren't real people with real jobs and like real relationships. Right. Like everybody that I know who writes fan fiction has like kids and a job and like a real life and is like a normal person. So yeah, I mean, again, like I didn't tell anybody that I was into fan fiction for a long time because of that sort of like, oh, you're into like that side of like fandom. Like that's not the cool side of fandom. That's like the super geeky side of fandom. Yeah, so I would say that's pretty negative. And then like there is some negativity within like fan fiction itself. Like people can be judgmental about what other people are writing.
Oh yeah.
Whether that's like character development, like Mary Sue sort of issues. Or just like pairings that like a lot of people do not like reading Ron Hermione. That's totally fine. I'm just like of the mindset, like if you don't like it, just scroll past. Like nobody's making you read it. Like I don't read a lot of things. Like I do not read Hermione Snape. That's a huge huge branch of fandom. And like I'm not here to shit on anybody. That's just not what I am into. And like it doesn't bring me joy to read it, so I just skip by it. But if that brings you joy and fulfillment to write it and read it, then like as long as you're not hurting anybody and you understand that it is a minor and a
consent issue is huge.
There is a consent issue for sure.
Like,
can we spell that? And like honestly, one of the things that's very important to me, like I had wanted to be a sex therapist once upon a time, and so like in this limited capacity in BGS, I want to put on as many hats as possible for any of us. So can we state expressly what is this consent issue between Hermione, a student, and Snape, a teacher? Because I'm assuming that we're talking about it within the context of pre-graduation Hermione. We're not even going to deal with issues of post-graduation. Let's keep it within the...
She can do what she wants.
Totally.
They're both consenting adults at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's quite a few consent issues in life and in fan fiction. So obviously in this case, the issue is twofold. It's both Hermione is not at the age of consent and therefore cannot consent to sexual relations with an adult. And there's also a power dynamic issue in consent in that Snape is her teacher and she does not have as much power as he does. And that happens a lot in lots of different fan fiction. There's a big like Harry Tom Riddle ship situation, which again has both, well, depending on when it's set, can have both a power and an age issue. And obviously there's like a lot of other fan fiction that has like sexual violence and rape triggers, that obviously is loaded with consent issues. That's not what I choose to read, but I understand that like a lot of people like to read those. Yeah, that's largely why I read canon compliant things, because it feels less like it's breaking consent issues.
Yeah. JK might have screwed up a few things when it came to writing Harry Potter, but consent was not one of them as to teacher-student relationships.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
I would say that's the biggest issue with some of the more deep dive kind of fan fictions for negativity reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of the issue I've been having with AO3, honestly, is that like I can't weed that stuff out well enough.
Right.
That like I don't even want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was gonna be. Well, let me finish with Colleen
and the
before we get to
on
this.
that is a little bit more like you can say scroll past, but if it's something that's that triggering, it's kind of like.
How about you, Colleen? Anything negative in addition or different from what Flo already wonderfully raised for us?
I think it really depends on what we define as fan fiction. I have heard a lot of people call Cursed Child fan fiction when it is in fact canon, according to JK. There's the
Look at
issue
Flo's
of,
face. If you're listening on the podcast, Flo, I think just ate a
technically it
lemon.
is.
I'm not sure.
Technically it is, but a lot of people call it like a Harry Potter fan fiction.
Okay.
Or even
and not
like,
a good one.
Right, and not a good one. That's what they're like, this is terrible. This is decanonize. But like Star Wars Legends or Expanded Universe, the EU, that could almost be kind of considered in a fan fiction tier now because it's not canon. And people have been very upset that it was decanonized back in 2014 when Disney acquired the Star Wars property. And I can see why. I've been reading a lot of Legends stuff now, and it is great content. They have fantastic authors, they have fantastic storylines, but I can see why Disney did it. But the negative connotation
from a certain point of view, I'm sure. Well, exactly. I'll protect you on that one.
From a certain point of view, because I really have been enjoying the Legends content I've been reading. And I'm joining the echelon of people who are upset that certain characters aren't in canon yet. Like, I get it. I get why Disney did it. I get that they wanted their own vision. But also then you have this entire legion of fans of these books, which are now kind of fan fiction, that are sitting here being like, where's my stuff though? Like, where's Thrawn? Where's Mara Jade? And we're like, yeah, where are they?
Yeah, I wonder if and when Dave Filoni officially gets the keys to the fandom, whether or not there will be a re-bringing into the fold some of those stories that, I mean, if you're going to call them...
his way back. Like, Thrawn can make his way back. Almost any of the characters could.
Yeah, and I apologize that I can't remember some of their names right now, but there are fantastic content creators out there in the tubes of you that, like, break down why these legend stories are completely, if not almost entirely, like, able to be brought into the fold without any problem. So
yes,
I mean,
especially Old Republic stuff, like, easily could fold into canon.
Yeah, so if we're gonna call it fan fiction, they get 2 capital F's and like 2 middle fingers raised as far as I'm
this
concerned.
Is like prestige fan fiction at this point, if we do label it like that.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic example of when fan fiction is viewed negatively, but that's a whole other caliber of why there's salt in people's wounds. The only other additional tidbit that I have to add is that some people, when commenting, kind of made conjectures about fan fiction without being in the world at all, which is kind of part and parcel to what you ladies are talking about here. Because as an outsider, I assumed but couldn't remember when I was thinking, oh, is my Garfield comic technically fan fiction? There's almost a presumption that there has to be some sort of naughty bits included into it. Yes. And that's not necessarily the case. Yeah, it's almost as if, ladies, there's some systematic thing that we normalize in society when it comes to repressing or presupposing that things dealing with sex may or may not already be bad at the jump. It's very shocking to me to see it. Yeah,
I've never heard of anything like that.
Yeah,
I'm taken aback by this new theory that we've stumbled upon by happenstance.
But yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think like a lot of people assume that like if you're reading fan fiction, you're reading erotica, and like that is somehow like shameful and bad, and like you should be shunned for it. Let me like be extremely clear.
Please.
Not all fan fiction is erotic.
Yeah.
The majority, I would say, of fan fiction is like rated G or teen, like in a similar vein to the books.
And teen is kissing, right? I mean, to clarify everything.
Yeah, I mean, like
they might have sex, but you're not going to see it.
Right.
Okay.
They might imply that, like, we all know that like Remus and Tonks had sex. They had a kid. We never saw it. That is I would just
implied sexuality.
Like, right. So
we know that Bill and Fleur are doing things. Like they're so busy.
Yeah, they are.
Right. They were very, very busy. So I mean, while like yes, now I read more like erotic fan fiction because I'm an adult, like, and I can do that because I can, and if you don't think I should, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, buddy.
But yeah, I mean, it's not all like that. There is fan fiction for everybody. There's fan fiction currently being written by 11-year-olds still. So it's like, just let everybody read and write what they want and shut up.
Yeah. Exactly. And you know what? This is maybe going to get some people agitated. Yeah, which I liked. Like, let's just stir the pot, right? Like, let's think creatively about these things. Kind of like how Colleen was talking about Star Wars Legends. One could argue that once upon a time, and I, like, mea culpa blanking on his name, George R.R. Martin's 2 collaborators. Do you remember their names right now? I'm, like, foolishly blanking on them. It's so embarrassing.
For the
books. For the books, not the TV show.
Oof. I do not know.
Mea culpa, everyone. Flo's looking at this.
On the computer.
Yeah,
Ravenclaw is looking.
so one could even argue when they had first reached out to George, way back when, in like 1990s or something. That is one of the coolest stories I have ever heard of a fan reaching out to an author and just having largely his mind, but then her mind just dialed into George's world and then ultimately became co-authors on some source materials. That's like the creme de la creme of dreams for fans who really, really care. And I'll say again, plug for submitting something because we like giving people shout outs.
Okay, so again, like, I don't know anything about this, so I apologize.
I'll recognize.
If you're a Song of Ice and Fire person, I am coming from a place of complete ignorance, and I fully admit that. Are you thinking about the people who run Westeros.org? It's Elio M. Garcia Jr. and
correct.
Linda Antonsen, maybe?
Yes, thank you. Like mea culpa, Game of Thrones people, again, I am horrible with names.
And
you're correct.
Right. They worked directly with Martin on The World of Ice and Fire, which was the companion piece. And yeah, that's actually really cool. Imagine if like one of us got to do that with JKR. I mean, I would tell her other things too, but
yes, because Elio would help George R.R. Martin. He'd be like, no, her eyes are not green. We need to fix this.
He does continuity checks.
Yeah, just
really
fantastic.
Important when you have that long of a work.
Absolutely.
So one thing that I had wanted to ask, but we had been talking about something else. Speaking of continuity checks, how do you ladies determine, like, yes, this is fan fiction, I absolutely want to dig into, and or when you're in it, how do you decide, like, nah, never mind? Because my limited recent experience with fan fiction is one of our mutual friends had sent me a Harry Potter fan fiction that had been sold to me as very, very good. And maybe it was for that person, but I tried it and I was like, I don't think it was you, Flo. I don't think it was you, Flo, but I will be unable and unwilling to like check. I literally can't remember. All I remember is like, I really wanted to enjoy it, and I think it was the writing, and that made
Okay, I'm not taking it personally at all. Yeah, so that's actually really funny that you asked this question, because I posted to our Instagram story yesterday a really funny TikTok which like resonated with me on this topic. I actually also sent it to my husband. But basically it was like, if it's like over 10,000 words, like, thank you. Like, I like long form content.
Me too.
But if the grammar is good,
yep.
Like, sorry, if like your grammar
is good, I'm like,
yes, grammar speaks to me. If it's got like EuroTP in it, that's
what does that mean? What does that mean?
Pairing.
Okay.
So if it's got EuroTP, then you're usually good. Yeah, and then I mean, I usually just read the summary. If the summary is something I'm into, then I'll read it. I'm pretty particular with my fan fiction, so when I like can't find something good, I just go back to like the ones that I've read before.
Yeah.
I just like feel very like home.
Do you ever search by author, or is it always like the hashtag? Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's how I think I'd do it. If I found someone I really liked.
Writing style that you can enjoy.
Yeah.
Yes. Stay with that person.
Totally. And we can give Rex at the end, right?
Yeah, no, at 100%, absolutely, unequivocally. And I like our next thing once we finish up with you and Colleen is like some of the fan fiction submissions from 2 authors and then some Rex. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you know pretty quickly if the fanfic's not for you. Like, if the writing style or like the viewpoint is not for you, then just like go to the next one. There's a million out there. 822,000 or whatever Harry Potter fanfiction. So find another one.
Mm-hmm.
Wild. Okay.
For me, definitely, if I feel the urge to reach for a red pen and edit the crap out of it, I'm not going to read it because they needed an editor. Yeah. And even if it is fan fiction, for some people, like, cannot get past the typos or the bad punctuation, bad grammar. And then some authors, you're like, oh man, they really know what they're doing here.
Yeah, and a lot of fanfiction authors do have what's called a beta, which is like their version of an editor. And so like you pretty much know, like, if they have at least one beta, like it's going to be more readable than if they don't have a beta. And they usually announce that in the author's notes up top. Yeah.
Do they ever get paid for what they're doing? Do people do Patreons? Is it just for the love of the game?
I don't think you can because of copyright issues.
Right.
Yeah. You can do like Lore Olympus on Webtoon. It's kind of a fan fiction because it's taken from Greek mythology, but it's not copyrighted, so you're okay to use it in your story. And that is also excellent. First plug, like, yes, go read Lore Olympus. It's fantastic. But I mean, you can't make money off of other people's characters, basically.
Right.
And I do think like Warner Brothers is really like cracking down on the Harry Potter stuff. Like, I know there was another podcast, I think it used to be called Potterotica, that used to read Harry Potter fan fiction. That was like their podcast, and it was great. Like, I started listening to that, and they like had to change their names. They had to, broaden to just not just Harry Potter. Warner Brothers is very particular, and most Harry Potter fan fictions start with a disclaimer saying they do not own these characters or the world.
Yeah, makes sense. It as an artist, one of the things that kind of baffles me though is that there's so many options for fan art. Like, this drives me nuts, right? Because on the one hand, I want to create art that is symbolic or representative or blah, blah, blah. And like Flo does absolutely fantastic stuff for our Instagram, but it's almost one of those weird legal / ethical conundrums. Cause it's like, you can do this, but you can't do that. And either way, like, I don't know, maybe I'll just forever have quibbles with the law, but the story goes past the hardcover product book. It just does.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, I think we all know in the Harry Potter community during this time, like, she doesn't own this story. We own this story. We make it what we want it to be. Like, trans lives matter. Trans women are women. And like, we know that. And the fact that she doesn't know that is honestly inconsequential, besides the fact that she's getting paid for it. So
yeah, Harry Potter's bigger than her.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I would say like
she can have her opinions, but Harry Potter is not.
This time, like support small artists who are doing Harry Potter themed art. And here's a plug for Sid Sketched on
Etsy. She has the cutest stuff.
I have some of her stuff right here. Actually, I can reach. This was last month's print. It's Neville.
Oh, he's
so cute. So yeah, I mean, just find some people whose values you can support while still being in the world, because you don't have to write off Harry Potter and the wizarding world because of her. Yep. Like, we're so much bigger than that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking about writing off, why don't we write on some of those favorite fan fiction authors that you two were talking about, and then I'll give the little blurb that two real life authors submitted to us. So, Colleen, why don't you go first, and then Flo, to the extent there's not overlap, hit us up with your red.
There won't be. My two are two Star Wars ones that I recently got into that are excellent. The first one is Shannon Phillips, all one word, on AO3. And the main stuff that I read from her is Rebels content. And my favorite so far is Fade to Black, which is...
Great title.
It's a great title, although I have a feeling it's going to be really sad at the end.
Wait, Star Wars is sad?
Star Wars is sad. No one can be happy in Star Wars. But it's mainly about Kanan and Hera's relationship. And there are erotic components, intimacy components, but it also includes a lot of narrative on just their relationship and how they relate to each other, which is fantastic. She has a really great command of their voices, and she really only does Kanan and Hera. Every once in a while, another character will drop in, but she really has a hold and a handle on these characters. It was fantastic to read. The dialogue was great. Cool. Loved it. Then the second one is Sulis57, and she, I think it's she, does Obi-Wan Satine stuff. So Clone Wars content and pre-Clone Wars content. And it's also very well done. Another great command of the characters. Like, she knows the characters well enough to write them, which is really important. Because that's when a fan fiction can fall apart, is when the characters don't sound like themselves.
Right.
Oh yeah, I just read one of those last night where I was like,
They wouldn't do this. Yeah, the character you have to believe that the character would do or say what they're doing.
Yeah, I'll just shout it out right here. It was Ron being very dominating to Hermione, and it was like, she would never let you do that, my guy.
No.
Ron's a sub. No.
That's just, I mean, again, whatever you want to read, go read, but that's not the characters I know. But maybe we have a very different reading of Harry Potter. Okay, here's my highlights. These are on fanfiction.net. They are also available on AO3, but I believe they have different names on AO3, specifically just their author name, not the stories per se. The first one I want to recommend is called Pause. It is...
How do you spell that? P-A-U-S-E or P-A-W?
P-A-U-S-E. It is by TM Blue, so capital T, capital M, the color blue. She is like my favorite, I assume it's a she. She is my favorite author for all Ron Hermione fan fiction. Most of it, well, I would say like 80% of it is more mature, but not like just smut. Like Colleen was saying, it's got a lot of plot, and then just like it makes sense that there's things of a sexual nature in it.
They're not just having sex. Like, there's actually a lead up to the sex. Exactly.
And that's like what I like about it a lot. And so Pause specifically is about basically right when Ron comes back to the tent in Deathly Hallows, and kind of like how he and Hermione patch things up, and how they, I mean, it is a
did Harry have to excuse himself and like put on earmuffs or something? Was that like one of the lead ups?
Mufflato was
happen when he's on watch, so.
Okay, phew.
Yeah, it's actually a work in progress. TM Blue, if you're watching this, like, I need you to update my girl, because I'm dying. I've reread it like 17 times. So that's one. And then all of her works are amazing, pretty canon compliant, really, really great voices for all of the characters. I've got 3, sorry. The second
No
one,
apologies. There are no apologies ever at BGS.
Though. They're very, very different. The second one is called Everything in Transit. It is by Bo Truckles on fanfiction.net. And she goes by a different name on AO3, but it can also be found there. It's great. It's actually takes place after the Battle of Hogwarts, but like between that and then the 19 years later. Again, canon compliant. Ron, Hermione, Harry, Ginny. She's a big Harry, Ginny shipper, so a lot of the stories are Harry, Ginny. Mostly I won't read it unless Ron, Hermione is the main ship, so this one, Ron, Hermione is pretty prevalent. And then finally, I want to shout out one of my favorite stories from back when I was in middle and high school.
Yes, bring it back. Bring it back.
I think this one's still on AO3, but I actually downloaded it as a PDF to my phone.
Gotta keep it close.
Because I can. Mostly because that's the only way I could find it. I remember reading it on fanfiction.net back then, and then I think it was just moved to AO3, so you can't find it on fanfiction.net. It is called The Price of Love, and what I love about, and it's by Rogue Sugar, but spelled
good name.
Yeah, it's Rogue Sugar, one word, but sugar ends with an AH, not an ER, because Rogue Sugar. And what I love about this one is it brings me back to a simpler time because it was before the series was completed. Oh. And so it was like, yeah, this could actually happen. I believe she wrote it, I want to say after Order, but before Half-Blood Prince. So, we didn't have all of the holes filled in yet, figuratively and literally. And it is mostly teen. There are mature excerpts. She actually wrote them separately, so you can choose to read the whole story with or without the mature bits.
That's a class act author right there.
It actually is, because like none of the story really revolves around those things at all. So if you want to skip it, you're welcome to skip it. If you want to seek it out, you can easily find it. Yeah, I've read it both ways. It makes as much sense both ways.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. And then the 2 fan fiction submissions, I adore this. So, according to the authors, quote, as a note, we both had to write each other's since we are very reticent to give each other or give ourselves any props, which is so adorable and is like just so sweet. So the first fan fiction author is Julia Martell on AO3, and her notable fanfics are, quote, The Princess and the Septa, and then A Wedding in Sunspear, which is in progress. And so her friend and colleague writes, and I love these descriptions, writing as if she is a perfect fusion of George R.R. Martin and Jane Austen, Julia Martell is guaranteed to titillate in her explorations of A Song of Ice and Fire. However, she would like to note that this is also reflected in her publication schedule, or rather, schedule. My apologies. Drawn to exploring Dawn, the family drama therein, and the unique manifestation of the patriarchy with respect to the rest of Westeros. Julia Martell offers page turners featuring the close POV structure A Song of Ice and Fire fans have come to love. If you enjoy themes and parallels, and potentially being bashed over the head with themes and parallels, these are the fics for you. Quote, The Princess and the Scepter, end quote, serves as a delightful gap filler, expertly setting up the now infamous Queenmaker plot, while, quote, A Wedding of Sunspear takes liberties with many pre-canon characters and a delightful assortment of original characters. So I think that's adorable AF.
Yes.
And then the second one is, what was that?
I'm hooked. I will read. 10 out of 10 will read.
I know, right? And then the second one is fan fiction author Kylie, Fics and Musings on AO3, FICS and Musings, which I think is a great name as well. Notable fan fictions include, quote, Seeking Sato, I think I'm pronouncing that right, S-A-T-O, Sato, quote, Potato Sack, which is a great name, quote, The Tribunals. The fourth one is A Guy Named Kanto. And then the last one is Half the Pieces. So 5 for the price of one author.
I cannot wait to see where this author is from.
I'm like,
so we're going into a completely other genre. If you're looking for the gaps in the Avatar-verse narratives to be filled in the most meticulous way possible, Kylie is the author for you. With a particular focus on all things Asami Sato, Kylie offers fics that focus on the nitty-gritties of Avatar, The Last Airbender, and Avatar, The Legend of Korra, from political intrigue to family drama. Her 2 fast standalones, my word, in the Atla era will leave you racked with the feels and secondhand guilt from a younger Boomy and Toph respectively, while Kylie spends most of her time in the Korra era, highlighting the rich inner world of Asami Sato, while further coloring the lives of those around her and the relationships she ultimately winds up in. Oh, and of course, more themes. Not bad, ladies.
That's great too.
Not
Excellent.
bad.
When you first said Avatar, though, like I pictured the blue people.
Me too.
Interesting.
Me too. So
I no longer do that.
I only do that because of my husband's work. But
I loved Avatar. Excellent visuals, and I suppose if there's a
talk about a
fiction out there,
yeah.
tell me about
Avatar is definitely a fan fiction.
Which I think is a lovely segue as we conclude with what I am dubbing our quote unquote spicier content section.
Woo!
So if you have any younglings around, I will leave it to you.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I leave it to you to decide what we do with our families. So I would say this is a little bit repetitive for the first question. So if we need to skip it, no worries.
No, we don't skip it. Let's go.
Yeah. So first and foremost, do you both consume erotic fan fiction, and why do you think erotic fan fiction is so prevalent?
Because it's not in the content. You have to get it somewhere.
It's all that tension. I need relief.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think like all of us have like this one character where we're just like, yes, he's so hot or she's so hot or like I can't even. But like like mine is Ron Weasley, in case you were wondering.
In case you were not tuned in.
In case you didn't know me at all. But like obviously in canon, he's like the most he ever does with anybody is Snog Lavender, and at that time he's 16 years old, and I am almost 30. So I need like Ron to grow up so that he can like stay my heartthrob. And so that's why I read, well, that and other reasons. That's why I read erotic fan fiction. But also like, I think it's just like a less shameful way to get that sort of content. Like I know like as a kid, not as a kid. Let's not get crazy. As like a teenager, I would like go to the grocery store and like pick up the romance novel and be like, ooh. And like it was pretty good and whatever, but like now we can get whatever we want on our computer and it can be exactly tailored to how we want it. So like, no, I don't need to read. I'm going to shout out a particular book that I bought at the grocery store. This book was called In the Highlander's Bed.
Ooh. Just read Outlander.
It was very good. It was very, very good. I brought it to my trip to Guatemala with me in high school. But like, I'm way more into Ron Weasley than I am like in
random Highlander.
Old school Highlands. So, you know, why not read exactly what I want? It's on my computer. It's not shameful. It's completely natural. Go do your, as long as it's consensual, then like, you're good.
And that's, you know, since Colleen mentioned Outlander, I've noticed when I speak to some older women, I haven't really talked to older gentlemen about this, but when I speak to older women about what kind of erotic film or visual genre they enjoy, because I mean, Netflix was just like, yo, HBO, hold my White Claw. So I've discovered that they're much more likely to enjoy the recommendation of Outlander and I think it's Catherine the Great on HBO, not The Great, which is on Netflix.
Okay.
And I'm guessing, although I could be wrong, that it has to do with that like aging up of the characters as part of it, because the two women protagonists in each of those respectively are certainly older than like the Riverdale people that I ogle, for example.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. What about the kind of question to ship or not to ship? What are your thoughts in general? And I know that Flo has some pretty hard stances, and we've done fan art, right? But like, what are each of your thoughts on shipping characters, especially if those characters aren't in established relationships at some point on the page, or if we remove it from a book on the screen? And for example, we already talked about this, so maybe new information, example like Sirius and Remus, Harry and Hermione, as opposed to Ron and Hermione, Maul and
I'm gonna head out.
Yeah, exactly.
Flo is gone.
Yeah, so like clearly Flo is having a visceral reaction, but it to me, being an outsider on the world, it sounds just indicative of wish fulfillment. So find what scratches your itch, right?
Yes, definitely. Especially if a ship is not canon. It's just the person wants these two characters to be together, and so they write about it. Yeah. And then they find an audience who also wants those two characters to be together to consume the content, which is, it's totally fine for the most part. Like, yes, if this is a relationship that these two characters are actually having and it's a consensual relationship, like, sure, go nuts. Go nuts. Because even the Maul and Amidala one, I was very concerned about it first.
Yeah.
But it was a consensual relationship, so I'm like, okay.
Poor Maul, he just really needs a partner. That's all I'm saying.
Needs a hug, man.
He does need a hug.
All the hugs.
Volunteers.
Yes. I volunteer as tribute. I will hug Maul.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't read Harry Hermione, but I used to ship Harry Hermione, if believe it or not, like probably before
I'm
Goblet.
shocked.
Yeah, I know. Before Goblet. I mean, because it just like made sense, you know? Like, Harry's our protagonist and Hermione's our main female character, and Ginny like didn't have that much of a personality in the first couple books, and then she like really came into her own. Yep. Obviously, after Goblet, I was hooked. Like, I was done. Like, it's been Ron Hermione since then, since 2000. So, yeah, I mean, I love shipping. I've always been a shipper. I built my own ships. I used to be on the forums about ships. I used to name ships. I used to do all that. In fact, like, I'm honestly kind of annoyed that now Ron and Hermione is called Romione. Like, that is not the name of the ship. The name of the ship is The Good Ship. So like, that was the name of the ship way back when. We came up with it. I don't know who's calling it Romione, but I like cannot with it.
These younglings, man, they're coming up.
I mean, I can't with you. It's always been called The Good Ship, because they used to be called that. They used to be called like SS whatever and HMS whatever, and it was so cute and funny and precious. Anyways, so yeah, I mean, I read, again, canon compliant. However, like, there are some ships that are not canon but could be canon compliant if we knew more about the characters. Like, I don't mind reading Remus Sirius. I wouldn't just read a Remus Sirius fan fiction because I only read Ron Hermione fan fiction, but if, like, on the side of that, Remus and Sirius were together, that I don't have an issue with that, because we don't know if Remus is bi.
Right.
So just because he married Tonks doesn't mean he never had a thing with Sirius.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that Tonks doesn't use her powers for good.
Sure, exactly. Right. So, I mean, there's definitely certain things, like, I'm totally fine with. I don't read Draco Harry because, to me, that makes no sense in canon. I'm not saying it could have never made sense in canon. There certainly is, like, a point where that could have made sense, but unfortunately, like, literally that ship sailed. And so now we know that cannot happen in canon, and that's what I read. If you're not reading canon compliant or canon fan fiction, then, like, you go right ahead and ship whatever you want.
Maybe that's why Draco's so like stalwart at the platform. You know, he sees what could have been as
like, man.
Excellent. Okay.
Story, yeah.
My next saucier question gets a little bit into the science of men and women / genders. So I did a little bit of research, but you have to caveat research online with like a big old caveat, especially these days, regardless of how Ravenclaw inclined we are. There's only so much we can do without PhDs attached to our names. But the question that I want to pose to you ladies before I break down some potential facts are, do you believe that men and women, or frankly any gender, but particularly men and women, experience erotic content differently? And if we get into this a little bit more specifically, are men into things like visual porn because of the visual component? Would they enjoy written erotica as much, or is it more of women who consume erotic written works over men or other genders? So I see since you might be listening on the podcast, Flo is nodding vehemently. So Flo, why don't you go first? Colleen, you go, and then I'll drop some like psychological alleged stuff research.
Okay. So everyone that I know who reads fan fiction is a girl. First of all, like, just besides my best friend Julian, who wrote fan fiction with me when we were like 12, who is not heterosexual. I don't know any guy who reads fan fiction, and definitely I do not know any men who read her erotic fan fiction. I have given stories to my husband and been like, this is what I like. Here you go. And he's just like, I don't get it. Like, what is this? And like, why do you like this? And like, why is this a thing? He would like much prefer to turn on something visual and be like, this is what I like. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it does not translate in the same way. I think like just the like lead up and having to like read about it and imagine it is not their strong suit. Sorry guys. Again, you're good at lots of other things like visual spatial things, but like I like to imagine it myself. And yeah, I don't think that it translates.
Yeah. How about you, Colleen?
I had that question myself just because of the notion that men are more visual as opposed to the written erotica. I know a few men who read fan fiction, not a lot. I know a couple who have tried to read erotica and just were confused. Or some of them did read it and enjoyed it and were like, oh, this is what this is about. Okay, I can maybe like get behind this. But for the most part, I don't know that many men that would read it or would admit to reading it.
Yeah.
And Duncan is back. Hi, Duncan.
I think like also like there's something to be said about like the slow burn, right? Like
yes.
I think we're like more into like a slow burn and like a lead up, and they're just like wham
get
bam.
to it.
Yeah.
The foreplay, guys, it's really important.
It's so important.
It's really important. You can usually tell also if a fan fiction that's erotic was written by a woman. Yeah. Because there's a lot of foreplay involved and just mutual pleasure also involved when a woman is writing it.
And just like more talking about it maybe. Like I feel like in the ones I really enjoy, like for example, Pause, like I think it takes 14 chapters for them to actually have any sort of like what you would consider like anything super erotic, and they still have not had sex in the fan fiction. Again, it's a work in progress, but it has a lot of chapters and like quote unquote nothing has happened, but like it's the best.
But there's tension.
That's right.
There are things to be said for tension. Tension is really important to a narrative.
But I don't think guys are into tension in the same way.
Yeah.
No.
I would say first, that's really interesting that it would take up to 14 chapters because at least
that's a long right there.
That's a long pause right there.
Okay, so again, he had just left, so he like needs to rebuild a relationship. And also they're 17, and we all know that Ron is a super virgin, so
they're all very awkward, just a lot of awkwardness.
And they're in a tent and they're shacking with their best friends, so
I will say that at least from my limited recollection in the romance novel arena, my understanding is like authors generally speaking have like rules for when first like sexual encounters are supposed to happen. There's like a literally a page limit that if it hasn't happened by this page, you need to rewrite, which I find very, very interesting. My second plug while Flo looks for this is go ahead, Flo. Did you find it?
No, I just want to say this actually has 24 chapters. I'm just trying to look at how long it took them. Can I just like say what they did?
Yeah, of course you can. Of course, I'm sure that there are people who are interested. I mean, here you go. Spoiler alert. This is your spoiler. If you don't,
that you read Pause by TM Blue. They like went outside and like laid down on a blanket and like touched themselves next to the person. Aww. That's it. But I'm pretty sure it took maybe 20 chapters. Well, so anyways, go on.
So this gets me to my second point.
If you're watching this, please do not report me to HR.
Well, this gets me to my second point and kind of what we're talking about, dealing with consent and acceptance and those kind of things. Fellas, if you're watching these three fierce females talk about this topic and are thinking like, why isn't my partner this open with me? I bet you your partner does want to be this open with you, but maybe for whatever reason they're not. So if at first you don't succeed giving your partner what they need, ask and look in a book because it's gonna be there. There are ways to like work through this. So when it comes to some of the like research that I did, I remember from when I got my BS, I was literally allowed to choose at my alma mater whether or not I wanted a BS in psychology or a BA in psychology, which, sorry, alma mater, I think that's a little bit weird. I chose a BS. And so, quote, the human sexual response cycle, sexual desires, activities, satisfaction, and physical and mental responses in men and women are different. Surprise. Men usually feel sexual satisfaction during sexual activity and are more prone to physical attraction, whereas women are more affected by the environment and the emotions related to the sexual partner or sexual fantasy. Ah, ding, 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 right?
There it is.
There it is, right there in black and white, and are more prone, more affected by the environment, or sexual fantasy in terms of sexual satisfaction. Men generally respond to visual sexual stimuli such as attractive nudes or erotic pictures or exotic films. Women, however, respond differently to the same sexual stimuli. This is according to two papers and or studies from 1994 and 1997. Moreover, men are more sexually aroused by visual stimuli, but women are more sexually aroused by concrete, auditory, olfactory, love that word, touch, and emotionally relevant sexual stimulation. Studies there are from 1983, 1992, 1997. But what's important here, folks, and what we like talking about when it comes to inclusivity and intersectionality and like literally critically evaluating what we're reading, right? Because we could look at this and go like, they agree. Like, next, moving on to the topic. We have to remember that this paper that this one person in the ether chose was from information derived focusing on only two genders based on studies from frankly, like, it's been a beat. Doesn't mean it's invalidated, but norms are shifting. So more recently, a 2018 piece focused on research from 2004, which I find, this one I really find to be interesting, where the researchers presented heterosexual men and women, as well as gay men and lesbians with different sexual films. One film depicted two women, one featured one man and one woman, and the last involved two men. The researchers measured participants' self-reported, so there's always a caveat with that, subjective sexual arousal, as well as, objective genital arousal. Look at that. Science. The results for the men's sexual arousal were consistent. Gay men exhibited more subjective and objective arousal to the film involving two men, and straight men experienced more subjective and objective arousal to the film involving two women. Interesting. The author's findings regarding women's arousal, however, were surprisingly inconsistent. So #men, we feel you. We are a precarious beast. You must ask so we can receive. Although lesbians reported more subjective feelings of arousal to the film with two women, and heterosexual women reported that they were most strongly aroused by the film involving one man and one woman, both lesbian and heterosexual women were equally psychologically aroused by all three films. Get it, ladies?
Yeah.
The researchers were open about it. The researchers interpreted these results to imply, so we're not sure yet, right? Imply that women's sexuality is more fluid or flexible than men's. However, none of the researchers suggested that the women are inherently bisexual. Interesting. But it is the experience of psychological arousal, but it's a question. But is the experience of psychological arousal sufficient for women to feel sexually attracted to a partner? Other research raises questions about whether objective or psychological arousal is sufficient to stimulate feelings of sexual desire in women, and whether women respond differently to psychological sexual arousal than men do. Boom. Boom. So there you go. Feeling a little hot and heavy with that science. It's a lot.
Of science. I don't know.
That's a lot of science.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense, though.
It does, yeah. I mean, it tracks.
Yep. So, I mean, the lead scientists were calling, what's interesting, that few men or women have absolutely male or female brains, which makes sense because gender is a construct, but I digress. Most of what she calls like mosaics, combining brain features typical of your gender with those more typical of the other gender. And then when it comes to pornography use, I won't get into like all of the black and white stuff, but there was a pretty clear distinction between how much porn women would consume versus men would consume, not only in frequency of use, but also if porn was consumed, how much a particular person was going to be consuming it. So no matter how you look at it, at least from objective stats at this day and age, men are more visual, or at least more willing to report that they are visual, whereas women are more willing to report, if not in fact, more up here in our brains. So if you titillate us here, men, you'll titillate us elsewhere.
That's usually the key. You gotta get inside the head, otherwise it's not going to work.
Otherwise, no head for you.
Yeah,
exactly. Sorry.
Yeah. I can't remember.
Read us a book.
I can't remember which rappers use it, but it's like give and get brain, and I freaking love that, right? Like that's totally the lyrics that work for me. And speaking of lyrics that work for me and titillating, are there any words in this saucier kind of conclusion that like if and when you see it in a fan fiction, you're like, yes, let's go.
Words?
Yeah, I don't know. Like is there like, yeah, like specific triggering words where you're just like, yes, this is definitely gonna scratch my itch, and or words that if you're like, ew, I'm just gonna pretend that word doesn't exist.
Okay, I really don't like the word tits.
Okay.
I'm really just like not into that. If I had to,
I don't need the word engorged. I don't need that word. I don't need that.
Thank you, 10 things I hate that. I don't think there's like a specific word per se, but like I like proper British dialogue. Like you need to give me some British isms because I need Ron to be in character. So I think for me it's less the words and more just like giving me some tone, some like, you know, some good Britishisms. That's all. Like,
especially since it's set in England, you do want it to have the right.
I need Ron to call people pricks and like tell people to bugger off.
Yeah,
that's what I need.
How about you, Colleen? Not to put you on the spot regarding your particular kinks.
I'm trying to think, like anything that's like infantilized, I'm not a fan of. Like the word panties, like no.
That one grinds a lot of people's gears.
Just like toss it out there. It's just, it brings you to a level where it's a low maturity level and you're just like, that's not what I want to be reading, but like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the same with like the word boobs. It's like, what? Yeah. Like boobies. Yeah.
You can say breast, it's not scary.
It's fine.
For real. I think, so long as there's like a mature level of language, it's a lot better. I don't mind if there's swearing. Like, I don't care about that.
It's better if they're swearing.
Yeah, I like swearing.
People fucking swear.
Exactly.
It's just more realistic. I mean, if it is set in a universe that would swear differently, like if it's Battlestar Galactica, like yes, have them say frack, or have them say a curse word from that universe. Sometimes that can pull you out. Also, like Flo said, if it's set in England, they should be using British slang.
Yep. Cool. Well, we kind of ran through all my questions and the questions that were submitted by people. I know that each of you had some notes. Is there any deliciousness that we still have to dish from each of you two at all?
No, I went through my notes. I went through my notes and more.
I think I went through my notes, yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, then I think this is a great place for us to finish strong together and simply say thank you so much for joining us for this fan fiction addiction episode. To the extent you have questions on this topic, you have additional authors or stories to shout out, we're going to eventually, slowly but surely, try to build out a website so that people can submit things, so that things are easier to find. Because we drop a lot of freaking knowledge that sometimes if you're not taking notes in a podcast, which I don't know who does, but props to you, like take a selfie of that and submit it because I would freaking love that. We're going to be working on that for you guys. And we thank you while we were off in July. Coronavirus, it's still real. Mask the frick up and stay strong, stay sane. We're probably going to be doing some more one-off episodes before we kick it into real high gear to some content that I know people in particular are fiending after Colleen. So
very excited.
So we're getting very, very excited, and not just because we were talking about fan fiction for about 2 hours. Ladies, is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with? Because like JKR, we left them pretty high and dry for a little while, and we have dove in deep today.
I would just say be bold, be proud. If you read fan fiction, read it. Don't be ashamed that you're reading it, because there are plenty of people who are also doing the same thing.
Yeah, I echo that same thing. Just like be you, be unapologetic. And if you're reading fan fiction, send me some recommendations.
Yes. Yes. It is truly like what we care about here. This is a community by a community for a community. And so we'll sign off by saying we can't wait to see you at the next episode. It's going to be another one-off topic. I'm really I'm so flippin' frickin' excited I can't speak right. So share with your friends to the extent you can. You all know you're smart, how to beat the algorithm. Thank you for being in our community and listening to us. Love you so much. Keep those pages turning, and those wands better be up.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.